The mental grand. We're letting you go, effective right now. Security will escort you out. She didn't even look up when she said it. Still logging into Slack for the very first time. The CEO's daughter-in-law, day 1, office 1, and she had already chosen her first target. Me. No handshake, no warning, no explanation. Just a trembling junior HR rep standing behind her like a man watching someone defuse a bomb with a plastic spoon. The ink on her onboarding packet hadn't even dried yet, and she was already playing executioner. She had her hair in a high ponytail, resume printed on thick cream card stock. MBA confidence inflated like a bounce house at a divorce party. She didn't ask questions, she didn't blink. Just read the termination line word for word from her iPad. You could tell someone had coached her, probably her husband, probably her father-in-law, probably the mirror. I didn't flinch, I didn't argue. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and handed over my badge with the kind of quiet grace you only develop after 30 years of swallowing power plays and grinding through boardroom egos. She thought she was firing me. Thought this was her first bold move. All I said was this: tell your father-in-law the board meeting in 3 hours should be very interesting. Then I walked out. Past the silent HR rep. Past the security guard who looked more confused than concerned. Past the framed portrait of the founding family in the lobby, the one that, funnily enough, left out the woman who actually wrote the bylaws their entire empire was built on. 3 hours. That's all she had between her first firing and her first legal catastrophe. In that time I imagine she celebrated, popped a little champagne in the corner office, my corner office to be precise, maybe drafted a LinkedIn post about decisive leadership and tough calls. She probably had the hashtags ready. Leadership, next chapter, girl boss, whatever buzzword her personal brand consultant told her to sprinkle in. What she didn't know was that I wasn't heading home. I was filing. You see, buried inside the original shareholder agreement there was a clause. Clause 17C titled plainly, Emergency Reassignment and Voting Suspension Trigger. Written by yours truly, reviewed by legal, signed by every single investor who had ever asked, but what happens if leadership goes completely off the rails? The answer was this: if an executive is terminated without a formal board vote, and that termination is initiated by an appointee holding 0 equity, then the appointee immediately loses all interim authority. The board convenes within the day, and voting power reverts to the majority shareholder. Me. While she was measuring her new office for curtains, I was filing that clause activation. Dated, signed, time-stamped, couriered to every board member, every investor and every general counsel tied to this company. And unlike her welcome packet, mine came with a certified return receipt. She thought I'd go quietly. What she never understood was that I didn't build this company to be seen. I built it to be protected from people exactly like her. Entitled, impatient, handed power the way you hand someone the family Wi-Fi password. She was not the first to underestimate me. But she might just be the last. Because by the time her LinkedIn post was halfway drafted, her name had already been flagged in the system. Unrecognized executive, no voting rights, pending shareholder review, and her father-in-law, the founder himself, still hadn't seen the packet. But he would. Oh, he most certainly would. Let me tell you something about how I actually got here, because nobody ever talks about this part. There's a reason my name doesn't appear in glossy company brochures or on the About Us page. I was the shadow in the scaffolding, the clause in the contract, the call you made when the boardroom lights were off and the SEC was circling overhead like a hawk. I never wanted the spotlight. I wanted structure, stability, leverage, and equity. God, the equity. While they were namming conference rooms after the founder's grandchildren and handing out plaques to people who had been here 5 fiscal quarters, I was taking payment in percentages. Half a point here, a full point there. Equity, not bonuses, voting shares, not titles. Every time a deal closed or an investor came sniffing around, I negotiated another sliver. Quietly. Efficiently. I didn't play poker. I built the table and printed the cards. It started back when this company was 2 folding chairs, a whiteboard, and a founder who genuinely believed compliance was a dirty word. Visionary? Absolutely. The kind of visionary who couldn't remember whether we'd paid our vendors or accidentally wired 6 figures to the guy who repainted the break room. I stepped in, streamlined things, stabilized the chaos, secured the foundations, and for my trouble he offered me a VP title. I declined. I asked for stock instead. You'd rather own the ceiling than sit beneath it, he joked. Exactly, I said. By year 3 I was sitting on 18%, by year 8 41. The CFO left in a screaming match over misallocated funds. I picked up his shares at a steep discount. He needed the cash. Divorce is expensive. When the founder's brother tried to sue us into oblivion and failed spectacularly, he offered to settle privately. I accepted the remaining 31% in exchange for a bulletproof NDA and a promise never to leak the family's offshore disaster. 72%. That's where I sat, quietly, no fanfare, no parades, just majority ownership neatly filed in the Delaware registry. And nestled inside that ownership was Clause 17C, a peculiar little appendix that nobody ever bothered to read, because we had never needed it. Until now. Because what Blondie didn't understand, what nobody in her overpriced business school ever taught her, was that inheriting a title does not mean inheriting control. Control is not gifted. It's not in your last name or on your office door. It lives in the contracts, in the fine print, in the clause written during a 2 a.m. call with a paranoid investor from Boston who wanted to know exactly what would happen if someone's entitled kid ever got handed the keys. Turns out it activates exactly like this. One smug little termination. No board vote, no cause, no process. Just a woman with freshly whitened teeth and a new email signature strutting into my office like she was casting a reboot of Succession. She triggered a corporate trapdoor that had been bolted shut for 17 years. Now the board was opening a very different kind of envelope, sealed in a FedEx package stamped confidential. Clause 17C activation. The courier had arrived 15 minutes prior, handed the packets to executive assistants like jury summons, and left without a single word. Inside that packet was a 3-inch stack of consequences. Cover page, Clause 17C activation. Shareholder transition proposal. Subheading, request for immediate emergency board meeting under bylaw 8.4. Attached was a signed trigger letter dated that morning, timestamped at 7:03 a.m., hours before I was ever terminated. A complete equity breakdown. Every share accumulated over 20 years, every transaction, every co-signed agreement. A full portfolio ledger with notarizations and verified filings. The reaction wasn't immediate. It was worse than that. It was slow. That creeping kind of dread when you realize you're not just in trouble, you're in litigation, and you simply haven't checked your email yet. By the time the founder's personal counsel hit the key phrase, suspension of executive authority upon unilateral termination by non-equity appointee, he actually said out loud, "Oh no." And then again, quieter, "Oh no." Meanwhile, back in my old office, she was pouring celebratory champagne. The kind of bottle they saved for IPOs. She popped the cork like she had just slain a dragon, completely unaware that she had not fired the dragon. She had fired the woman who was the dragon and replaced her with absolutely nobody. First day, first problem solved, time to clean house. She crossed her legs in the CEO pose she had seen in 1,000 stock photos and opened her laptop. Started typing. Today I made my first difficult decision as Chief Strategy Officer. Leadership means prioritizing the health of the company, even when it's uncomfortable. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. Something felt off. Her inbox had gone quiet. No replies from legal. No congratulations from the board. The digital dashboard that normally displayed voting thresholds and operational metrics was completely grayed out, as if someone had flipped a switch she didn't know existed. She tried accessing the cap table. Error. She tried approving her own expense request. Denied. She tried scheduling a leadership memo through internal communications. Blocked. The systems weren't crashing. They were rejecting her. Then her phone buzzed, unknown number, one text. The lead investor, what is happening? I thought she was untouchable. She reread it twice, mouth dry, it wasn't a prank. Untouchable, that word wasn't about her. It was about the woman she had just tried to delete. The same woman still listed as primary signatory on every single system. The same woman whose name appeared in the digital registry like the root directory of a network she had never learned to navigate. The same woman who, according to the cap table, still owned the entire place. She looked at her LinkedIn post, backspaced all of it. In another office, the IT director was calmly backing up a copy of the registry to a secure drive labeled, per clause 17C. That was the moment she realized something business school never covered. You don't delete a queen from the board, you just trigger her next move. Now let's talk about the founder. He was mid-backswing on hole 7 at the country club he half-funded, chewing a cigar that matched his tan and his ego when the first call came in. Ignored. Second one too. It wasn't until the third ring, persistent, sharp from his general counsel's personal line, that he grunted, dropped the club and snapped, "This better be good." What followed was not good. It was catastrophic. "I need you back at headquarters, right now." "What, why?" "She signed something, you need to hear this in person." Click. He didn't finish the round, didn't tip the caddy, didn't change out of his cleats, just stormed to the Escalade and made it back in under 20 minutes. An Olympic record for someone who usually required 2 assistants and a valet just to get through the front door. When he arrived, legal was waiting. So was the CFO, one trembling assistant, and a half-full conference room where nobody was smiling. The general counsel didn't waste time. He opened a leather folder, took one breath and read aloud. Per clause 17C. Any executive termination carried out by a non-equity appointee without prior board vote shall result in immediate revocation of all interim leadership authority, suspension of all executive appointments made within the past 48 hours, and automatic deferment of executive control to the majority shareholder pending emergency board review. The founder froze. His jaw clenched. Who signed the termination? No one answered. He asked again, louder, more desperate, who in the hell signed the termination? Finally the general counsel responded, flat, unforgiving. Your daughter-in-law, Alone's. The silence in that room was surgical. The color drained from the founder's face like someone had pulled a plug behind his ears. She doesn't have sign-off authority, he said, as though saying it aloud could roll back the clock. No, the attorney said. She never did. She holds zero equity. Her authority is entirely derivative. Under clause 17C, her unilateral termination of a corporate officer is both invalid and illegal. This is a misunderstanding. I'll talk to her. We'll rescind. There is no rescind. The clause is live. It was triggered before the termination was even executed. Time-stamped, notarized, distributed to all investors. But she's family. She's not a shareholding member of this family. The attorney paused. And right now, she is sitting in your former advisor's office eating strawberries and asking how to change the company mission statement. The founder sat down hard, like the chair had reached up and pulled him. His hands were shaking. No longer the swaggering patriarch of $1 billion portfolio, just an agging man who had handed a loaded weapon to someone who thought the safety was optional. What do we do? He asked. The general counsel closed the folder. You sit in that boardroom. You listen. You do not interrupt. And when she walks in, because she will walk in, you remember that the majority shareholder holds 72% of this company. He looked up. Where is she? On her way. The boardroom was already full by the time the daughter-in-law arrived. The kind of full that leaves no room for small talk, just tight glances, clipped whispers, no pastries, no coffee. Just water, ice melting slowly in sweating glasses, as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees and nobody wanted to acknowledge it out loud. She walked in wearing a cream-colored power suit that had never seen the inside of a courtroom. Same confident expression she had worn all morning. She moved toward the head of the table. The board chair cleared his throat. You may observe, he said, but that seat is reserved. She blinked. Reserved for whom? The room didn't answer. Instead, the general counsel spoke from the far end of the table. Per clause 17C, your appointment as chief strategy officer has been suspended, effective immediately. You hold no equity. Your position received no board vote. The termination you initiated this morning was unauthorized, and all executive authority granted to you has been revoked. I don't understand the clause, she said, voice faltering. Was it not just a hypothetical? It is fully in effect. Activated with proper documentation this morning, before your action was even taken. She looked around the table, waiting for anyone to intervene. The founder stared at the table. The CFO scrolled his phone like he was trying to fast forward through reality. Even her husband, seated near the far end, wouldn't meet her eyes. Finally, the board chair leaned back. The leather groaned like it was passing judgment. "She triggered it," he said simply, "the one you tried to erase." That name was never spoken aloud. It didn't need to be. Her presence was already in the room, felt not seen, like gravity had shifted toward an invisible center. The woman she had tried to fire was everywhere, in the documents they were holding, in the emails they were rereading, in the clause everyone had forgotten about until it activated like a fire alarm inside a locked vault. She hadn't even entered the building. And yet she owned it. At exactly 2:59 p.m. the door handle turned. Slow, deliberate. The room tensed like a live wire. Nobody spoke, even she stopped fidgeting. The door opened at 3:00 on the dot. No rush, no fanfare. She wore the same black suit they had seen on her 1,000 times before, tailored like a second skin, not flashy, not loud, but unmistakably hers, the kind of presence that requires neither introduction nor explanation. She didn't smile, she didn't nod, she didn't ask for permission. She walked straight to the head of the table, placed a leather folder in front of her and stood. She opened it and read, voice calm, not theatrical, not emotional, just fact. As majority shareholder, I formally request a binding vote to rescind all executive appointments made in the past 48 hours, pending shareholder review. The words landed like bricks dropped from a height. The board chair cleared his throat. Motion received, logged, entered into record for immediate consideration. Still nobody moved. The founder didn't speak, he didn't even lift his eyes. Just sat there staring at the water glass in front of him like he couldn't understand how it had gotten there. He looked smaller. As if someone had reached into his chest and removed the confidence that had carried him through IPOs, acquisitions, and 3 lawsuits without ever flinching. She didn't look at him, she didn't need to. The lawyer confirmed the filing. A vote would proceed, the board would reconvene privately. "I'll stay," she said. Not a request, not a threat, a statement of fact. Someone asked quietly, "Would you like to take a seat?" She turned, looked at the empty chair at the head of the table, looked back at the room. "No," she said, "I'll stand." It wasn't defiance, it was dominance, quiet, absolute, and deeply unsettling, because you don't sit down when you already own the table. The founder finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "You set all of this up." Her eyes locked onto his. "I protected what you handed to people who hadn't earned it." No one interrupted. What was there to say? She never stormed, never screamed, never sent a single passive-aggressive email. She waited, she watched, she let them believe they were in control. And now she had reminded every person in that room that sometimes power is not loud. It is silent, strategic, patient, and impossible to fire. The boardroom emptied slowly, like people leaving a church after an unexpected exorcism. She remained standing. When only the founder was left, he spoke at last. "Can we speak privately?" She gave the faintest nod and walked to the small adjoining room. He followed, every step weighed down by the 2 decades he had spent believing he was in control. She did not sit, he did. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "You don't need to say anything," she replied. "You need to make a choice." She opened the folder one final time and slid 2 pages across the table. Side by side, no theatrics, just terms. Left page, a buyout proposal. Her 72% stake at 10 times current valuation. Clean, no litigation. He could keep the building, the name, the shell. Right page, reorganization. She remains majority shareholder and becomes executive chairwoman. Immediate restructuring. Departmental audits, asset tracebacks, no more nepotism, no more ceremonial titles. She takes the reins, publicly. He stared at both pages. "I need more time." She didn't blink. "You've had time. I never intended for things to reach this point." She tilted her head. "Then you should have read what you were signing." He reached toward the buyout page, hand hovering but didn't pick it up. "You'd walk away just like that." "Clean house or sell," she said, "but I will not let this place decay under your name while the foundations rot." A long pause. "How long do I have?" She picked up her folder. "You'll receive the formal offer tonight, 24 hours. As she reached the door, she paused. "One more thing." He looked up. When she walked into my office and fired me, she said, voice low and steady, she didn't make a mistake. She made a choice, and choices have consequences. Then she opened the door and left him alone with the one thing he feared more than losing control. Living in a world where he never truly had it. The next morning the building felt different, stripped of pretense, like someone had peeled back the wallpaper and found the original blueprints underneath. No announcement, no Slack blast, no celebratory donuts, just one calendar update on everyone's schedule, emergency transition debrief, executive attendance mandatory. The founder didn't show. His resignation email arrived 5 minutes before the meeting. After many wonderful years, I am stepping down for personal reasons. I have full confidence in the board and shareholders to guide the company forward. Nobody replied. The daughter-in-law arrived at 8:57 a.m. Muted grey blazer, flat shoes, confidence gone, eyeliner slightly smudged. Badge didn't beep at the main conference floor. A security guard approached her gently, respectfully, and offered to escort her out. She didn't fight it. She handed over the badge, the company phone, the keys to the office that had never truly been hers. As they walked her past reception, she glanced up at the digital display board where executive names used to scroll in glossy animation. It had already been updated. One line, executive chairwoman, appointed by majority shareholder, no photograph, just the title. She entered at 9:00, still no fanfare, walked straight to the head of the table. This time she sat. They began with action items. Executive role audits, equity realignment, contract rewrites, nothing dramatic, nothing chaotic. Just the meticulous, quiet work of a woman, reclaiming the house she had designed with her own hands. At one point, someone joked they should print Clause 17C and frame it. She didn't laugh, she just nodded once. Make sure it's displayed somewhere visible. Meeting ended on schedule. No applause, no press release, just movement, momentum, a return to real leadership. She gathered her folder, walked the same corridor she had been escorted down just days before. Same tiles, same scuffed corner, only this time people didn't look away, they nodded, held doors open, made space. She passed the IT office, the director gave her a thumbs up, admin rights fully restored. She didn't break stride. She passed the compliance wall where the outdated org chart had been taken down. Someone had left the nails in the drywall, a reminder that nothing is permanent, but some things leave marks. And finally she reached the lobby. Same receptionist, same desk. This time she stopped. Set her folder down, smiled, not smug, just real. Tell them I'll need new badge access, she said. Something with a gold chip would be ideal. Then she picked up her things and walked out. Not like someone returning. Like someone who had never left. Because power doesn't live in a title or a nameplate or a last name. It lives in the wiring inside the walls, the ink in the contracts, the clauses everyone forgets about until they're reminded. And now every single person in that building remembered exactly who built it. Hit that subscribe button if you made it this far, because the next story, trust me, you don't want to miss it.